In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove and replace your engine oil pan on a 2.4 Jeep Renegade, located at the bottom half of the engine. Drain your oil. You're going to need a 13mm wrench or socket. We'll pull that drain plug out. Make sure you have a catch basin. You're going to catch that oil. And you're going to let that drain. So on ours, we are going to change that oil filter. It's because we waited till it was due for an oil change to do the oil pan. As you can see, the oil pan's rotted. If you just did an oil change and then you know that filter's good and you don't want to change it, that's up to you. You know, if you change your pan because it got dented, but it's just a filter and I don't want an old oil going through the new oil mix. That's an oil filter wrench. So with that, I'm going to grab the bucket, just move it a little bit over. See if I can drain that filter. Now I'm going to reinstall the oil drain plug just to stop the residual oil from dripping all over the floor while I take that pan down. And I'm just going to snug it by hand. No need to tighten it or anything. So now I can take that oil filter out the rest of the way and drain it in the catch basin. Now we're going to remove this support bracket. There's 2 bolts mounting it, one here and one here. 10mm socket, and we're going to remove that bracket. Then on the tube side, take it right out of the way. So before we loosen up these 2 bolts for the oil pan on this AC bracket, bottom bracket, we're going to loosen up the main bolt that attaches the compressor to that bracket. 13mm wrench or socket. It is going to have to come all the way out of that bracket because we're going to remove that bracket down so we can get to the oil pan bolts. All right, so there it is. You can remove that, and now we'll get the 3 mounting bolts. So now there are 3 bolts going into the block that hold this bracket on, and it's a 12mm socket. There's 2 on the front here. And then 1 in this little cutout. And then 1 runs right here on this side where the belt is. Grab the bracket and just slide it down. So there's 18 bolts total holding this pan up, not counting the bracket, obviously. Now I have 18 bolts left. There's 2 right here in the front by the compressor that are 12mm socket, and then the rest are going to be a 10mm socket. So I'm just going to remove these 2 first, then work my way around. All right, so we're going to go by the belt first and work our way around. Now you're going to have several, I think there's 4 over here underneath this pipe. You don't want to take that pipe down, so this is where you would use a swivel socket to get in there. So now I have a 10mm swivel. I'm going to see if I can get this socket out. Maybe I'll try over here. And this last one, I'm going to just break it down like that, leave it just like that, and I'm going to put one in the back, same spot on the back side, just a couple of turns in, so when I pry the pan down, it doesn't drop right down. So now with I have this little pry bar hook that I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to find a safe place to try to get under that pan and pry it and work my way around to break that RTV or gasket maker. And once it breaks free, I can really work it around. Just be careful because my pan is rotted, and I think yours might be too because they're kind of notorious for this. And make sure you don't pry against like the AC compressor. Make sure it's a solid place that you're prying against. There she is. Now I can take that pry bar and work around to the front. That's it. Do a little bit over here. We got that last bolt in the front there that I put in. So now I'm going to take my 10mm socket, I'm going to support that pan and remove it. Now with a safe scraper, I'm going to scrape the RTV, the old stuff, off of the block. I'm going to go all the way around. And as you can see, it's just chunks of this stuff, and you're just going to make sure it's nice and even all the way around. I don't recommend a grinder because then you'll get all that into the block, plus it's aluminum and you could damage it. Now I've taken my scraper and I've gone all around that block to get the most thick part of that gasket sealer off, and now I'm just going to use a flat razor. Try not to gouge the aluminum, but I can get a closer cut and really get the rest off. I'll probably follow this up with a little bit of emery cloth sandpaper just to get the final piece by hand. I'm not going to use a tool. Like I said, I don't want any of the aluminum block coming off and shredding everywhere and making it uneven. And just go all the way around and clean it up. So now we have our new pan, all nice and clean, which it comes clean, but make sure there's no debris on it, oils or anything, in case you touched it with your greasy gloves or hands. And we're going to put a 1 or 2mm bead of RTV. As long as it's oil resistant is what you're looking for. And just work your way all the way around. So before we put up our new pan with the RTV on it, and gasket, meaning gasket maker, I'm going to take a rag, clean one, spray it with parts cleaner real quick, and see if I can get any of the debris off and residual oil, shall I say. Just make sure it's nice and clean. Then I can throw that pan up real quick. The oil in the fresh new RTV doesn't work, it doesn't blend. So you want to do this as fast as possible to make sure there's no residue. Okay, let's get the pan, bring it up. Make sure you have your pan aimed in the right direction, ready to go. And the transmission side is going to go up first. Try not to scrape anything. And then bring it right up. And there we go. Line it up, just like that. Get 2 bolts. Like I said, start one. It doesn't matter where you put it. Just hand start it. And I'm going to go opposite side. I'm going to go as snug as I can with my by hand. Do the same thing. Snug it up. Now I'm personally going to use a speed wrench, which is like an antique drill, hand drill. I'll show you what it is because I like to really feel what's happening with the actual bolt because the torque specs on this is real small. So this is what they call a speed wrench or speed socket. This way I can just not over tighten. Then I'm going to snug these 2 up. Perfect. Now I'm going to put the rest of the bolts in. Plus, if you feel it by hand this way, you know you're not cross-threading into that aluminum block. That would not be great. pre-look at all your bolts too from the old gasket sealer. Make sure they're not filled with on the threads. You just give them a good wire brush, clean them. So now I'm going to put in those 2 long bolts that go up into the second engine casing, and that's this one. Start it by hand, and then this one. And that's a 12mm socket, so we'll get that real quick and spin them in, bottom them out. Now you got to work kind of at an even pace here, fast, before that RTV sets. You want to get these all torqued, then put the bracket in and torque it also. So now that all the main oil pan bolts are in, I'm going to torque those and then put that AC bracket back in. All right, so I'm going to do all the 10mm head bolts first, and I'm going to do it in a crisscross pattern. And then when it comes to those, the 12mm, that's basically an 8mm bolt. Those are 17 foot-pounds, and each little 6mm bolt is 89 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go front to back in a crisscross pattern from the center out. 89 inch-pounds. Crisscross basically makes sure that the sealant is getting squeezed equally all the way around, which really makes sense. It's what you want to do. Even keel. I got to get the swivel socket for those 2 difficult ones. So the 2 8mm bolts are going to be 12mm socket at 17 foot-pounds. And you're never going to get to these again once that bracket is on, so make sure you double check it. So now I'm just going to take my 10mm socket and all the 6mm bolts at 89 inch-pounds. I'm just going to go around in a circle to confirm they're all snugged max. Then I'll put that bracket on. Last one. Okay, now we can put that bracket up. So here comes the bracket. Goes on the pan and connects the AC to the block. Start it by hand. Get one in. Then I'm going to put the one over by the drive belt in. Start it by hand. And then that center one, that deep cutout hole, I'll use my speed wrench, 12mm socket. I'm just going to snug it up, and I'm going to put that long bolt in because you want to make sure that that's loose enough, the one that goes vertical here, I mean horizontal, because you don't want that tight and not be able to start it. You want that bracket to be able to go back and forth. There you go. Awesome. So now we're going to go back to the pan because we want to get these all snugged before the RTV completely cures. get our torque wrench. We're going to torque those to 17 foot-pounds. I'm going to start in the center one and work my way out. Double check. Now let's tighten up this AC bolt the rest of the way. I'm going to torque that. I'm going to torque this to 21 foot-pounds. If you can get in there. Even though it's a new pan, I'm going to double check my drain plug for torque specs. And the new pan happens to be a 17mm socket or wrench, and the torque is 20 foot-pounds. Yeah, I got a quarter turn out of that. So now we know that won't leak. It's set to factory specs. So now I'm going to put the oil filter on, then replace that bracket, lower it, and fill it up. I'm just going to clean that housing, oil filter housing, one last time. I filled my filter up with fresh clean oil and put it on the gasket. And I'm just going to hand spin that on. Once it bottoms out, give it a nice strong quarter turn. And now we can put that bracket on. And that's a 10mm socket. So now we've lowered our car, ready to add our oil. And this particular car, if you don't know what kind of oil your car calls for, the weight or the amount, shall I say, the weight, this one is 0.20. Check your oil cap. If not, that little icon is the manual. Check your manual. And I can tell you that this car takes 5.5 quarts of oil. So we're going to just start putting it in, up to 5.5 quarts. Now we've added all 5.5 quarts of oil. I'm going to remove my funnel, put the cover back on, make sure it's tight. So now I'm going to start it, let it run for like 2 or 3 minutes, then I'll shut it off, and I'll wait about 5 minutes before I check my oil level on this dipstick, because I want all the oil to go back down to the pan. So it's been about 5 minutes. I'm going to remove the dipstick, and we're going to wipe it, make sure it's nice and clean. And I'm going to show you before I put it back in to check the measurement. There it is. You might see all those X's right there. So right here is considered full. Anything the X is perfect. Anything past that X, you don't want to do. You're over full. And you don't want to be below those X's. So let's put it right back in and check it out. Let's pull it out. Wow, right there, right at the very top of that X. That's 5.5 quarts. We'll place it. So once you've performed your oil change, you're going to come inside and not touch the brake pedal with your foot and hit the ignition button twice and turn the ignition on. You're going to put your foot on the gas pedal and push it 3 times slowly all the way to the floor within a 10-second period. 1, 2, 3. Turn the ignition off. Then you can turn the ignition back on and it should say reset to 100%. Yep, it's gone. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.